Hi, this is Anna Crowe with the Get Real podcast, where CEOs, CMOs, and communications experts share their real advice. It's 6 questions under 9 minutes because we get to it real fast. So let's get to it. Excited for today's guest. In a few sentences, please tell us who you are and what you do.
So my name is Mika Leah, and I am the founder and CEO of Goomi Group, and I am currently in the process of launching my second company called Buxxomly.
Awesome. Very exciting. And I've heard a little bit about your new company. So congrats on that.
Thanks.
Awesome. In a few sentences, because we're going to try to get these real fast. What do you think is the best thing about being a leader in your industry?
Wow. So being a leader in the industry. So the first company is Goomi Group is an on-site fitness and wellness company. So there's one side of that. And then the other side is Buxxomly, which is a women's timeless foundation piece. So foundation garment. It's amazing. So being a leader in the space in Goomi Group is really what it means to be a leader. Is I think just being on that cutting edge and making sure that we're constantly pivoting to stay relevant and staying relevant enough to be able to solve our clients' constantly evolving problems and to be able to be that solution.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And you're really listening, like you said, to your clients and making sure that you're doing the right thing. And part of that is really creating those authentic connections. I hear from other successful executives that creating authentic connections, whether it's with your customers or your team or others, can be challenging with all the noise today. What's your take on that?
I think it's really important to meet your clients where they are and do the good job of listening to what they have to say. Constantly being in communication with them. We try to survey our clients as much as possible and asking them what their pain points are, and then to be able to come to them with solutions that solve those pain points. But at the same time, I think it's really important for us to stay in our lane as a company. So not to veer off so far off of what the company is and the brand is. And I think it's really important to stay true to the brand while solving those clients' problems, for sure.
I love that. And you're so right. And you've used one of the magical words of the year, pivoting, as well in your answers. What other real advice can you give to leaders? Is there anything else that you think is really important on top of that?
I think as leaders, we get kind of tied into what we think should be or how it should be done. And I think an important part about leaders, and that goes into the pivoting piece, is being flexible enough. Our Goomi Group translates into rubber band. So it's a really weird name, but it's about stretching, body and mind. But I think as leaders, we also need to be able to stretch and be flexible enough to change. And I think change is the hardest part as a leader. And then flexible enough to listen to our teams. I think all of our teams are just as smart as we are. And it's important for us to be flexible enough to hear what they have to say and be able to try it. And sometimes, especially now with everything that's going on, is that flexibility to try something and to just, give it a go. I just saw literally 5 minutes ago, one of our competitors has completely changed everything of who they are. And I thought, wow, they're really pivoting to this space, but I don't know if they're going to have the flexibility to turn back at any point. And maybe they don't want to. So I think that as leaders, we need to navigate that space between being flexible enough to change and to, but not crazy enough to change everything so that we can't turn back, that there's no turning back. So I think that it's that constant,
the balance, if you want to call it, but yeah.
I guess so.
I love that. That's great advice. And you touch a little bit on this piece of emotional intelligence in there too, to really listen, understand, and change as necessary, which I love. And that applies, personally and professionally on so many levels. That's cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Absolutely.
Well, before we get to our final, more of a fun question, what other successful executives such as yourself would you like to give a shout out to or think should be on this podcast?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. And I'm going to totally blank. I just met a fabulous woman. Her name's Adrienne. She's the president of a company called Franny Goldie. And I just chatted with her yesterday. I also, oh my gosh, I know so many. Kate Nolan is amazing. She was the CEO and founder of Graced by Grit. And it was really turning, just the grace, and having grace and grit, I think, is so important. And you have to have a little bit of both. And I'm constantly reminding myself during these times that to have more grace. I think a lot of us leaders have all the grit that we need, but to give ourselves grace is so important. And I don't think we as leaders give ourselves enough grace throughout the day and in our lives and in all different points of our lives. So Kate Nolan's amazing. One of my other mentors is like Barry Carrion, and I've got Mish Pierce, who's amazing too. She does a podcast for Wharton Business School, and she's a great leader. Yeah, I try to surround myself with amazing women leaders because there's so many out there. And when I first started my company, I didn't realize how many were out there. But I do like to meet amazing women and talk to them and pick their brains and see what's going on. And there's so much to learn from each other. And there's so many ways that we can lift each other up. And that's what I love what you're doing with this podcast. It's just all about lifting other women up and letting women know that we can and we should lift each other up as much as possible.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. And I couldn't agree more. Very cool. Well, our last question is a little bit more of a fun one. I always love to get a little background on where someone came from. So tell us about your first job.
Oh yeah. So my first job was in advertising, and I just kind of lucked into it. And I was a media planner, and that was the first job that really taught me that advertising agencies were a super cool place to work, but at the same time, you had to work your tush off and you had no social life. It was, an 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. job. But I really learned so much in that position. And then along the way, I just found that, every job kind of leads to the next, but not in the way that you expect. I always see that life of an entrepreneur, and it's got like the zigzags and it's like the curly cues and everything else. Yeah, exactly. The ups, the downs, the sideways. I've been an advertising exec. I was an event planner for a hot second of my life, and I learned so much about organization from that job. And then I did sales, and then I did I did marketing. I got into the marketing world and everything. When I look back now, and I think this is really important and advice that I love to give, is that at any point you can switch jobs. Like, I never thought I had what it took to be a CEO. But when I look back at all of the jobs that I had, they all play into the job in the role, not the job, but like the role that I have now, whether it was the management or whether it was the event planning or whether it was the sales skills or whether it was the marketing skills. If I look back, all the pieces have kind of made the puzzle. But when I was making the puzzle, some pieces felt like, where do these fit? How do these belong? But when I look back, that like the puzzle has kind of shown itself. And so I think it's really important to know that no matter what the crazy jobs are, all of those skills are going to be relatable to the next job, no matter what.
Yep.
And I think that's so important to remember.
So true. And I definitely want to talk to you more about that offline. We share that commonalities. Great. Well, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for tuning in. This is Anna Crowe with the Get Real podcast. And for more insights, visit us at crowepr.com. Thanks so much and make it a great day.
Thanks.